Hi everyone, and we've got a special guest joining us from over the water today. So we're joined by Dave Hancock. Hello, Dave.
Hi Andy, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing very well. It's great to catch up. I've not seen you for a long time. So the first time we met was actually you were doing a talk for us, and on the panel that day was Dave Fever and Mark Leather, who now I know from reliable sources, aka Dave, that you were his best man at his wedding. So how did that come about first off?
Well, Dave started in rugby league with Wigan, and I was a little bit younger than Dave, although I probably look a bit older than Dave now with my grey hair that I'm getting, and the amount of work that I've been doing for the last 15 years. So we worked together. I was the academy physio at Blackburn in the 90s, and Dave came in from Manchester United with Brian Kidd. And we sort of knew each other, but we never worked with each other, and we just hit it off. Our whole philosophy about physio and rehabilitation and prevention and thinking out of the box and thinking laterally. And I'm inundated to Dave and for the experiences and the knowledge that he gave me, and for a relationship. And it was, we just clicked. We were two physios who were very enthusiastic about our world and what we do. And I learned a hell of a lot from Dave, and very grateful to him. I actually got a job, my first big move really at Leeds United, because of Dave. At the time in 2000, Leeds United had a huge amount of injuries. They were top three, that was sort of Champions League, O'Leary era. And they were signing some big time players. But they had some big time players like David Batty, Harry Kewell that were injured. And they decided that they wanted to have a change in medical personnel. Approached Dave, offered Dave the job, and he turned it down because of his kids and his family at the time. And he put my name forward for the job, and at 27 I went in and sort of able to learn from Dave and then put that into practice, and then my career took off from there really. So I'm very, very grateful to Dave Fever. He's an incredible physio, incredible guy, and a wise owl. And same with Mark Leather. These guys have been around a long time, experienced many things, experienced dealing with athletes, which I think is also something you don't learn in the textbooks. And I'm just glad that you have been able to get them on the podcast and teach. A younger version of me would definitely have been listening in and take on those wisdom. In fact, I actually listened to Mark Leather, and I actually learned some stuff from some of the tales that he was telling you.
Yeah, good. Well, no, glad to hear that. That's good to have you as a fan as well on there. So that jump then, so when you're at Blackburn, you're going from the academy and you're going into the first team. Like you were saying, Leeds were flying high at the time, loads of money, Champions League. What was that transition like for you?
So I think the issue I had going in there was that we had a lot of injuries, and we had some big time players like David Batty, whose sort of career was on the line. He'd ruptured his Achilles. It hadn't been diagnosed at the time. He had to have a full reconstruction. I think when I went in, there was probably about 8 first team players that were in the treatment room. So very quickly, I had to decide, and put my stamp down about how we were going to approach this. And I think the biggest thing I said to the players was build their trust, implement in some systems, build work ethic. There was players that were going home at 1 o'clock. And my view was that, you're never really going to clear this out without putting a lot of time and dedication. And that's not only from the staff perspective, but from the players. So I had to change sort of the mindset of people being injured. And collectively, I inherited some good people in Mark Niall and Alan Sutton. Steve Kemp, I brought on, who's now the England physio. Steve was my academy physio, so I brought Steve on board. Harvey Sharman, who's now at the Washington Nationals, I brought him on. Steve and him were 2 students that I had when I was at Blackburn. So they were good guys, enthusiastic and dynamic. So I went and approached them. And Tim Williamson was the academy physio, who's now at Celtic. So we had some really good personnel across the whole medical team. And I think it was just sort of my job to try and bring those people together, implement a structure. And, we were able to get a lot of those players back fit, and obviously had some reasonable success in the sort of reaching the semi-finals of the Champions League with Leeds. And I'm so pleased that the team is back in the Premiership where they deserve to be. I had some incredible years at Leeds United. And as I said to you, it really put me on the forefront of what I've been able to do since.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I didn't know that you had Steve and Tim and all the guys there as well. So that is a good team you had there. So then, from when you were there, were you there during the financial troubled times as well?
I was, yeah. So it's amazing just listening to the other guys, through experiences and things that you probably, not going to be taught. If a football club is one day you're told, you better clear your office out because one day you might turn up and there'll be a chain on the door and everything inside the building that you own actually will be gone. And then dealing with the financial. So we all had to take pay cuts, and obviously I was the head guy and was earning the most money. So my view was that if we wanted to keep the staff, that, I'd take the biggest pay cut and we try and keep our team together because that was very important to me. And I'm sure very important to the other people. And I obviously gave them the options if they wanted to leave, but I think we had such a good bond and a friendship. And I still talk to them guys. I even spoke to Alan Sutton a couple of weeks ago. So that was really important and, learned a lot of lessons from dealing with the finances of running a department. And they're the things, again, that you're not necessarily taught. And obviously I think it's helped from my business perspective of understanding a financial point of view when you think that the football club, has got bundles of cash because the players get paid X, Y, and Z. But here is a classic example of mismanagement, overspending, gambling on sort of Champions League qualification, and, completely collapsed. And fortunately, the club is now back. But at that time, it's pretty harsh to be, fighting for a Premiership title and then, 2 seasons later being demoted to the Championship and thinking that the club might actually go into liquidation. And it's quite horrific. I remember we played Bolton when we went down, and I sat on the bench outside and just couldn't believe where we'd been from and designing this incredible training facility at Thorpe Arch to where this team is going within the space of 2 years. But I stuck with them. My view is that the club was really good to me personally. I was able to do a lot of things, and the view was, a lot of things. My view is that if you enjoy doing it, the money is really irrelevant. If you wanted to earn a lot of money, then you can go into private practice or go into business. So I just felt that I was still enjoying it, and then I had a break and got approached by Chelsea, which was sort of taking me to a different level and really an opportunity I just couldn't turn down. But I think if that opportunity hadn't come, I probably might still be at Leeds United to this day.
Right. And could you see the writing on the wall with the financial side? At what point would you pick that up?
So once they started to, there was one time where they were negotiating with the players about taking their pay cut, and that caused a massive rift between the players. The PFA had to come in, and certain players were prepared to do it, and certain players weren't. And once that started to happen, you started to realise that this is actually very serious. So it's probably, I remember that PFA meeting, they had it in our rehab gym. And I think that was probably when I realised the writing was on the wall.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that. And then, so you go from there to basically a broke club to then the new guys on the block of Chelsea with Abramovich's money. So what environment did you go into there?
So I went into a winning environment. I mean, at Leeds, it was great. We had a great team. We had, great characters, great players, and we were definitely building something. But when I went to Chelsea, we literally started winning. And there was a small difference between where I'd been and the actual winning environment. And working under Mourinho, I learned a lot, and I look back and reflect on it and, realise what winning is about. And I definitely learned from him because he's 100% a winner, and it's all about winning. And there's little nuances that I saw experience. And obviously you have to have the quality of player, and we certainly have that. But you still got to win. There's a couple of teams at that time, and still are, that all have the same quality, but the mentality to win is slightly different. And with him at the head of the ship, he's very, very, very demanding. But he knew how to win, and proof's in the pudding. Everywhere he's been, he's won. Whether you love him or you hate him, he's a winner. So winning and getting trophies and stuff like that, no one can ever take that away from you, and being part of it there's nothing, winning FA Cups, Premierships, Carling Cups, there's nothing better than it. And if you're part of that team and doing that in your career, it's sort of the cherry on the cake.
Mm. So what's it like from that? What is the particular thing that, can you identify what it would be, whether it's the players, Lampard, Terry Cole, or Mourinho? What do you see as being that winning extra?
So I think psychology comes huge into it. I think the psychology of the player, the psychology from the head coach, I think the relationships, the trust, but psychology is huge. Being able to demand that extra 2-3% from that athlete and collectively to do it, and knowing how this athlete ticks compared to that athlete, and getting the most out of them week in, week out. And that is a psychological art. And I personally think, like the halftime speeches, I've been very fortunate to work with some incredible coaches, from Phil Jackson to Terry Venables to Capello, to Roy Hodgson. But Mourinho was on a different level at halftime. You never quite knew what he was going to do. And, his way that he would motivate people, it was just a level above. And I just think it's that differentiates. You all have to have the talent, but it's a different thing to manage the talent and to motivate the talent. Mm. And I also think, that sometimes over time, the athletes can become very drained from it. If someone's keep on pushing and pushing and pushing, then, the athlete sometimes needs a change of voice or a change of management. And that's why managers go to and from club to club, and that's successful at certain clubs, and then, it doesn't work 3 or 4 years down the line unless that person adapts. So, at Chelsea, I felt that was the one thing that I really admired about him and the players. There was a complete desire and dedication to win. And we had some big winners, like Frank is a big winner, John, big winner, Didier Drogba, big winner. It's that mentality siege that we're not going to lose no matter what. And when you've got that in the dressing room, and then you've got a general at the top driving, that's why you end up winning back-to-back championships and success. And the same when you look elsewhere, Klopp, Ferguson, these people know how to win, and they can sustain it year on, year out.
No, it's fascinating. That was a real special era, I thought, of the Premier League then. But in terms of you, so you're in there as a physio, so do you have to change the way that you operate depending on who the manager is, or do you feel like you perform at your level, to your standards?
I think that you have your own standards and own ideas and philosophies, but how you deliver that to each of the individual people that you're working with can be very different. So, my view about physio is a lot of it's about trust, right? And it's about motivation. And when you're with these people day in, day out, you need to realize that, you're not going to get on well with everyone. Someone's going to have a preference to work with another member of your staff. So, as a manager or head of the department, you have to juggle those people and put them in the right places to deal with that individual athlete. Because they all have different needs, they all look at things slightly differently. And I think if you can get that right and sustain sort of your level of care, you're on a win-win. But for me, if that athlete trusts you and that athlete believes in what you're telling him, and you are halfway there, because that's the thing that you're not taught in medical school. That's the thing that you're not necessarily taught in an environment for a clinic or for a hospital compared to dealing with someone on a daily basis with a professional team. And just because you think that this is right, you sometimes have to back down and meet them halfway. It's not always got to be your way. So, you can't come in and become a dictator. It doesn't work. You're dealing with many, and it's the same in business. I employ many physios and many osteopaths and chiropractors, but their needs are all different. So what you try and do is you try and give them an environment to grow, an environment to do their thing, and support them. But what their needs are all different, because human beings are different. And I think that's the thing that probably, if you look at the people like you've interviewed, like Mark's and Dave's and people like that, their knowledge and experience, but also their art of having relationships with those players is second to none. And that's what makes them different, if you like, from, say, another physio within the Premiership, is that ability to be able to adapt to those scenarios, those individuals, deal with situations, build up the trust, put the right personnel with that athlete, even though, because you can't treat everyone. It's impossible. But have a system in place that the players feel comfortable when they walk into your medical room. They know that they're getting the best care. And if you haven't got the answer, that your ego is not going to get in the way, and you'll go externally. You'll bring someone else in to help and assist with the environment. And that's another thing. A lot of people are, I think, in sport, quite insecure. And I remember I was quite insecure when I first started. I very much believed that I could treat everything and everyone. And I think as you get older and wiser, you realise that actually you can't be an expert at everything. And I remember a time, like for instance, with Jonathan Woodgate, he was at Real Madrid and he was having a nightmare. He basically kept tearing his hamstring, and I had a suspicion that it was coming from his back and not from his hamstring. But I was, at that time, I just wasn't an expert in the spine. So my view is, look, let's go and bring someone from outside in to assist us and get their opinion. And I think sometimes getting an outside opinion can actually massively help. Because sometimes you can get so tunnel vision in what you're doing in the environment that having an extra eyes or ears from external people can help. But that takes a lot of balls, because sometimes you think that the athlete will be like, well, you don't know what you're talking about, and therefore why am I seeing you when I should be seeing this guy? And I think, if there's one lesson I've learned over the years, is that if you're not sure, it's about the care of the athlete, not about your personal relationship with the athlete. Your job is to get that athlete fit and back doing what they love to do and what they're paid to do at a professional level. So therefore, it doesn't matter whether you bring 2 or 3 or 4 different people in to assist and help. It's actually the outcome that's the most important thing. And that player will respect you more for that than you trying to figure it out yourself and possibly failing.
Do you think that's driven by that insecurity? Is that driven by not wanting to lose your job or lose face, or?
Yeah, I do. I think what happens is you get into that cocoon environment and you'll pretty much, just think what you're doing is perfect and what you're doing is working and that you're the best. And with that tunnel environment, that cocoon environment, you never actually see what's going on outside. And I think really it's only when you step out of it, like I've done, that you realise, Jesus, why did I spend so long with that? Why didn't I do this or that? And hindsight's a wonderful thing, but, I think that external views and person, and obviously you've got to be smart about how you do that, because there's been scenarios where I've seen external people come in and just want to take over. So you have to control your environment. But I actually think that a lot of people in the medical profession, especially in the Premier League, should reach out and build up relationships with people that they trust, or people that have been there and done it. I know Dave now is doing consultancy. Same with me. I do some consultancy for some teams. But my view is I'm not going in. I'm not interested in anyone's job anymore. I'm not going to go back to doing the full-time team environment. I've had many opportunities to do it, and it's just not something that I'm interested in anymore. Support mechanism, I think, is quite important, because you can't be an expert at everything. You can read and research, but sometimes there's certain things that you might miss. And sometimes I think it's always good to look outside. One of the things that I've really done in my career is I've reached out and looked at what other people are doing in other sports. So I remember in the 90s, I used to go on road trips in the summer. I went to IMG Academy, which back then was Nick Bollettieri Tennis Academy. And the guy that used to work at the sort of sports performance center for Nick Bollettieri in Sarasota was Mark Verstegen, who created Athletes Performance and now Exos. Yeah. So I remember him in 94, 95, and doing stuff with athletes as sort of a strength coach, sports scientist, that I was like, wow. I remember spending, years on years going and watching Neil Black, who unfortunately passed away this year, who was head of physio for UK Athletics. And watching what they do in track and field, and just watching his manual therapy techniques and how intricate they'd be, and look at mechanics. And I just think that there's so much that you can learn from other people. And as sort of I've grown, I've looked at outside of the medical world, just looked at the business world. Now we're looking at sort of data. What do they do in sort of, the banks? What do they do in venture capital? What do they do on tracking information? There's a huge data explosion that, it's fascinating to me to see what other industries do that you can definitely replicate or take some ideas from to put into your practice in sport.
That's interesting. So is that what prompted you to want to move to the States and look at a complete new sport then?
So I was really lucky. I basically got poached for the job at the Knicks. And at the time, they were having some changes within Chelsea, and I could have stayed, but it really wasn't what I wanted, what I originally went there for. And, environments change and people change, and that's, I'm perfectly happy with that. And, I look at it back at my decision, whether I stay or whether I leave, and it was definitely the right thing to do because it allowed me to come and have 7 years in the NBA. And at first, my view was that, I'd probably just do a year and see whether or not it was for me, it was for them. And I just signed a 1-year deal. And then they came back and offered me a 3-year deal after that. And then I was the performance director. And then I was able to bring in Andy Barr to the Knicks and sort of, start building sort of an environment that they weren't tracking information. I was more interested to find out what they did in practice. So we were the first people to bring sort of GPS, accelerometry data into the NBA, and now everyone's doing it. We were doing testing where we were using data, looking at power production. I brought in my ex sports scientist from Leeds United, Steve McGregor, who's worked with Rory McIlroy, Manchester Youth Sport, consults from Man City. I brought Steve in to help me with some ideas. We collected sweat. We were doing things back in sort of 2008, 2009 that just the NBA hadn't done. And that was quite exciting. Andy had some great ideas and philosophies about prevention, and I wanted to create a prevention department which he would run. And it was a real great experience, but then over time, everyone changes philosophies and ideas. I think you just need to realize when it's time to move on, if this isn't for you. And both me and Andy decided that, it wasn't for us, and that we would either go and do our own thing and be our own bosses rather than work under someone else. And obviously 5 years later, that's what the two of us are now doing.
So was Andy at Man City then when you...
Yeah. So Andy was at Man City, and I poached Andy from Manchester City. And obviously I knew of him. I knew that he was really interested in injury prevention, which is something that I'm really interested in. And I wanted to create, a department within a department to do that. I would, my view is try and be proactive. And at that time, I couldn't do both sets of jobs because I was more interested in looking at the data and the science and start getting an understanding about how the NBA trained and how they played. Because we didn't have any information. We didn't even have heart rate. So we'd come from, working with people like Nick Broad at Chelsea and getting that information from, great people like him to going to the Knicks, which had nothing. So it was almost like we had to build a philosophy and collect information to analyze it. And I was very much like, if I'm going to concentrate on that, I need someone that I can trust and rely to do this. And that's where we brought Andy in after, I think, the second year that I was there, we brought Andy in. And it was brilliant, fantastic. A great physio, great guy. And, he's obviously clearly gone on to do great things himself, now living in LA. And I'm very proud at bringing him in and giving him that opportunity and wish him all the very best.
So at that point, when you started to look at this data, is that when you had Apollo in your mind that you were trying to formulate something that was going to help all these departments come together?
So when I was at Leeds, there was sort of starting to be a data explosion. GPS was coming in, I think it was like 2005, the GP Sport, and then Catapult came out, and then Stat Sports came out. And I found running the medical department that I was using one system for our medical notes. I was using another system to track, sleep. I was using another system to track GPS. And I was juggling all these different systems. And literally, I found I was spending more time on the computer than I was treating and doing the thing that I love, being in the treatment room or in the gym or out in the field. So Ram Avagam, who was the co-founder of Prozone, and they were based in Leeds, and I basically seen Ram on the lecture circuit. So I went to him with this idea, and I said, look, I have no idea how to put this together, et cetera, et cetera. We took some guys from Prozone and basically landed Manchester United as our first client. And then we basically built a product for Manchester United, and then my career took off. I went to Chelsea and the Knicks, and I pretty much said to Ram, I haven't got time for this company. And we didn't really run it as a company per se. It was very much like, we had a couple of clients, lost a couple of clients. We didn't have an investment of finances, nothing really going for it when we should have done, because at that time there wasn't Edge 10s or Smarter Bases or Kitman Labs or Sports Office, etc. So there was no competition at that time. So we were definitely at the forefront. And then when I left the Knicks, I was very much like, I've got some financial investment in the company. I was like, what are we doing here? And I said, look, if I take over the company, I'm actually going to just start again. All right? I'm basically going to start a brand new system, nothing like the other system. I'm going to learn from everything I've now learned, because data explosions moved on. And the old system was putting, like all of those other systems, putting people in boxes. And each team or each environment does not want to be put in a box. They want to be able to do what they do, their own IP, create any visualizations that they want to do, create any algorithms that they want to do. And what I was finding was people were taking data out of those systems and putting them on Excel spreadsheets, creating pivot tables. But then you were dealing with a scenario where you had to go to that person because the data is on their computer. And you have to go to this person because the other data is on their computer. So what you were finding was people were on these islands and data was all over the shop. And the left hand doesn't necessarily know what the right hand does. And what my view was that there's a way to continue working even on your Excel spreadsheets, but let's bring all of the data together to allow you to go into one door and then go through as many doors as you want and actually bespoke a system for your needs. So it took us 3 years to build. We spent X million dollars on it, and that's exactly what we've done. So we're looking at this very different from all of those players on the market. So we can go in and basically build a solution for an environment without them needing necessarily to change from their spreadsheets or systems that they're using, and bring it all together so that they can press one button, see the actual report that they need and get back to their job. Or even better, they actually can now bring it up on their phone. So my view is that the phone is the key. It's not a desktop. We haven't got time. It's, can I input data from my phone to the system? Can I visualize my reports that I need to when I'm sitting having a coffee with the coach, the GM, the owner, the player? Can I pull up the information that I need to see from my phone? And the answer is yes. And we've put many different solutions into our system to make the person using our sort of ecosystem saving time. I'll give you an example. So we have voice recognition in our phone. So I could treat you, press a button on my phone, talk, and your notes would go directly into the medical system. No more typing, no more going at the end of the day typing up your notes. It's automated. And not only does it type it, I actually can listen to my audio or your audio on that patient's notes. And it's things like that, if you've never worked in the environment and understood what it's like to work at the coalface, the pressure that you're under, the time restraints you're under, how tired you are, how you don't want to do certain things like 5 o'clock, be there writing your notes up where you'd rather be home with your wife and kids. But, it's got to be done from a medical legal point of view. Why not just be able to do it in the car, talking into your microphone on the way home? And there's many, many different features that we have like that in the ecosystem to allow people to become more efficient in the world of sport. And that's really why our system is very different from the other players that are on the market.
So it's less of an off the shelf, and it's more of a bespoke package for everyone.
Yeah, because we see it. I mean, we've got a number of NBA teams, right? So what the Chicago Bulls want is not what the Pelicans want. What LSU football wants is not what USC football wants. Even though they play the same sport and they might even be in the same divisions, they want things very, very different. And if your box doesn't allow them to maneuver that information, what they end up doing is they use your box at, say, 20% of its capacity, take the data out and put it somewhere else, like an Excel spreadsheet, and create a pivot table. And that's not what it should be, because then you've got a problem of communication. And at any environment, at any level, communication can always be better. Even at Chelsea, when you're winning Premiership titles, our communication could have definitely been better. So there's always things that you can do to monitor what everyone's doing and try and bring everyone on the same page. And that's what I'm trying to do with software.
Yeah, no, it sounds really exciting. I look forward to seeing how that develops. I mean, it's a great flagship client to have on first with Man United, so I'm sure you learned a lot going through that one. So just going back to the States then, so when you go into that environment in the US, you say that their setup is quite different in terms of the data that they've got, but the structure of the medical teams, how does that differ, or how similar is it to in the Premier League?
So in America, you would have athletic trainers, which are probably the same type of degree as the sports rehabilitation degrees that they do at, say, Bristol or Salford. You have a head athletic trainer and an assistant athletic trainer, and those two people would basically be your backbone of your medical department. And it used to be strength coach, head athletic trainer, assistant trainer. So that the physio side of it has evolved, but back in the day, you would have 3 members of staff for 15 players in the NBA, or you'd have 4. You'd have a head strength coach, assistant strength coach, head trainer, assistant trainer. The strength coach would work in their environment, basically getting someone strong, big, and fast, and then the medical people would just deal with the medical scenario. So what I did was I came up and sort of blew up that whole environment to say, you know, what the strength coach is doing, he's got to be partly responsible for injury prevention, and so is the athletic trainer. So coming from a physio background with also a strength and conditioning background, and incorporating the sort of the rehabilitation knowledge that I've had and developed, learning through people like Dave, is to bring that together so we're all under the one sheet. We're all basically fighting for the same things, prevent injury and improve performance, because that's what it's about. And then what I try to do is to bring game information in. So we started looking at game information, because you can make someone stronger, you can make someone faster, and you can measure it, okay? But if it's not actually happening on the grass or on the court, it doesn't make any difference. So you might not necessarily be actually working on the specifics of what that athlete needs to improve their performance. Because when you get to the elite, these guys are fit, okay? These guys are strong. Are they stable with regard to their environment of stability? That's more about the prevention side. But what works for one athlete might not necessarily work for another. And what I try to do, and we're trying to do with the Apollo, is to get that mindset around, look, just because he can jump higher doesn't necessarily mean that he's actually 3-point shooting or he's dunking or whatever, his production on the court is going to improve. Because if it isn't, it doesn't matter how high he can jump in the gym, it might actually be that his problem is someone being in his face, defending, to get the shot off. So therefore, maybe you need to think out the box on how you're producing that vertical. It might be that you need vertical with perturbation. So can you jump with someone pushing you back? How high can you jump now? And that might be more relevant to what the problem is on the court. And that's what I'm trying to do, is to bring that game information, what they actually do on their performance, week in, week out, day in, day out, to what we do as a medical personnel. And it's not how you were taught. You know, you were taught, can he jump higher? Yeah. Can he run a 40 quicker? Yeah. But that's of no real relevance if he can't catch a ball, can't touch a ball. he can't visually see where he needs to go once he passes the ball. So looking at that is where I'm trying to go, and what I've been trying to do sort of for the last 10 years.
So is that why you've moved around sports then? So then from the Knicks, you moved on to the Nationals. So is that a conscious decision that you wanted to go into a different sport? Or?
Yeah, so again, very lucky, fortunate. I got asked to consult for the team, and obviously we implemented Apollo into the whole environment. But then there's an art about how you implement that, you know, and very fortunate to be part of, you know, a success story of helping put some teams together, put some personnel in there, and then put data in their environment, improve communication, and, you know, they won the World Series last year, last year. So learning that environment was very different from sort of NBA. You know, these guys play every day. You are dealing with a lot of tradition. You are dealing with antiquated ways of doing things, but it's tradition. And there's a lot of psychology in those athletes. You know, they do things for years on years, and it's got them to be where they are. And it's very difficult to change that athlete's view or mentality, because their view is, I've done this to get to here. I'm actually not going to change because you're telling me there's a better way to do it. So again, there's an art about maneuvering that, dealing with the individual athletes, getting them to understand, educate them, etc. And I learned a lot. And obviously I was only in and out occasionally. I was very much on the periphery, but just talking to them, and, you know, I take my hat off to anyone who works in Major League Baseball, because I certainly couldn't do that full time. I mean, it is groundhog. It is, you know, you can imagine going to games 140, 160 games a year, right? Sometimes twice a day. They're long days dealing with the same situation. So it's a very different environment. But like I said, I think the more experiences you can get, the more you can learn from dealing with other people and other environments. You just suck it in and look and reflect. And, you know, it's definitely helped me for sure.
Mm. And from both a physical and mental standpoint, have you seen differences between whether it's basketball, baseball, football? Are there any difference, or do you find that there's similar personality type and physicality?
No, I think I think the one thing that I learned from American athletes is they're very, very resilient. You know, they basically, to be able to play day in, day out every 2 days is very different from playing twice a week, even though the physical demands are slightly different. Andy, are you going to edit this, Andy?
I can do.
Just stop. Can you tell her to turn the Hoover off? Oh. Sorry, my cleaner's in there. Can you hear that?
Can't actually. It's fine.
Sorry, mate.
I quite like the natural element of leaving it in, but no, we'll get rid of it.
Sorry. Thanks for chucking up. Thanks. I've got the cleaners in today. What were you talking about?
Talking about athletes and how the Americans are very resilient.
Yeah, so I think the American athletes generally are very resilient. I think a lot of them have come up from, you know, hardship. You know, you find a lot of people in the NBA are from single parents. You know, they've had to scrap and scrape. They come up from, you know, tough environments, tough neighborhoods. And to get to where they get to be the best of the best, sure, they need athletic ability. But mentally, I find them very, very tough. I think their resilience to be able to go in and play day in, day out, every other day, you need to have some sort of mental toughness to do that, to do the amount of traveling that they do. I look back now and laugh at players that would be moaning at when we went to the Champions League and, oh, you know, I got in at 2 a.m. and, you know, I'm too tired to train the next day. And I'm like, when I now look back on what I've done, I'm like, we used to do that every other day. And sometimes you play today and you're flying, getting at 3 a.m., you've got to play tomorrow. So no, to be able to perform like that, you know, is a different type of mentality, different type of mental toughness. And obviously every athlete is different. But that's the one thing that I think from the American sports that I've worked in, which have been playing, you know, continuously or every other day, that's one thing that did stand out to me, is that they are tough. They will play with pain, for sure. Whether that's a good thing or bad thing, but generally speaking, you know, they want to get out and perform. And then obviously the environments of where they're from. So, you know, an athlete from sort of California is very different from an athlete that's from the deep south. You know, it's the environments that they've been brought up. Some are religious. Some of them are, you know, have certain ideas about what they've done to get to where they are. And you have to respect that. And like I said, it's an art of dealing with the psychology, dealing with the actual management of that athlete, motivating that athlete. What works for one, not necessarily going to work for another.
And then what about the coaching? When did you work with Phil Jackson?
So Phil came in at the end in my last year at the Knicks as the president. And I actually, one of the reasons that the Knicks found me was through a good friend of mine, Alex McKechnie, who's now at the Toronto Raptors. And Alex worked with Phil at the Lakers for a number of years. He was brought in to work with Shaq. He trained at Leeds, the same place I trained at. And he recommended me. We didn't actually know each other personally, but we knew of each other. So I had a good connection with Phil when he came in through the door. And I love listening to his philosophies and his ideas. And, you know, going back to the Mourinho scenario, I found Phil fascinating as a psychologist. You know, he really understood what, as a coach, what one athlete needed is not what necessarily what another athlete needed. And obviously with all his success at the Lakers and at the Bulls and managing, you know, huge athletes like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, you know, that is a psychological art. And it's fascinating to sit and have breakfast with him every morning and pick his brains about this scenario and that scenario. And I learned a lot.
And how would you compare then with Mourinho then? Because like those two are, Phil Jackson certainly. I watched The Last Dance this summer, and it's just amazing seeing like his way of managing things.
Yeah, I think Phil was more around calmer. He was, you know, I think Phil wouldn't lose his cool as much as Jose. But like I said, you know, there's several ways to skin a cat. There's different arts of getting the best out of people. But it clearly works for those two characters, and the personalities clearly works, and dealing with the scenarios clearly works, you know, and having the foresight to use different techniques, as you sort of saw in The Last Dance, you know, and using, you know, tribal influence like Phil had, and where he's from, and where he has his house in Montana and the tribal Indians, or, you know, Jose's view about talking to one athlete compared to another be completely different. And just knowing what buttons to tick to motivate, and when to retreat, and when to push. And there'd be times, for instance, you know, I remember we played Porto away in the Champions League, which was his old club, and we were 1-0 down. And I remember coming at half time thinking, oh, he's gonna explode. He's gonna go at. And I always used to sit on the edge of the physio bed because it was like theatre. I was like, I'm fascinated by this guy. And it's really great, you know, now. And I still speak to Jose, and I text him after the win against Manchester United because I'm a Tottenham fan. So I'm actually glad that he's now with my own personal team. So I still speak to him. And he came in, and I used to sit at the edge of the physio bed thinking he's going to explode. He did the exact opposite. And he came in and said, everyone calm. And they were arguing, you know, because clearly there was a lack of communication for the goal. John was arguing with one of the centre forwards. The centre forward wasn't tracking back. You know, there was a lot of tension. And we were obviously expected to roll over Porto, right? And he came in and said, look, everyone calm down. We just need to do this. Score the next goal. Make sure you score the next goal. And I always remember he used to repeat what he said. He wouldn't just say it once, he'd say it twice. Score the next goal, everyone tranquil, go out, please, play, score the next goal. I know this team, they'll crumble. And that's exactly what happened.
Mm.
So, you know, like I said, it's the psychology and the dealing with athletes. And some athletes, you know, he'll basically, Jose will just cut them off, put them out of the pasture. He said, if, you know, you're not working for me, you're gone. And then it's clearly, sometimes it's a challenge. Like he challenged me. I remember once he challenged me. It was a great lesson. I come in and I was working really hard, right? And we had a couple of injuries, but nothing huge, but they were really big players. You know, we had Lampard. And looking back, I remember I pushed Lampard and he broke down. And looking back in hindsight, I was very much caught in the bubble of I've got to get Frank fit for the Champions League because the coach that's what the coach wants. But looking back in hindsight, you know, he wasn't ready. And I pushed and he broke down. And then the pie landed on my face and, you know, I had to take that. And then he was passed on to another physio to do. And then, you know, in their eyes, it was like, you know, you're crap. And I had to deal with all that scenario. But I look back in hindsight, I just got caught up in the moment. And that happens. It happens when you're pushing and pushing and pushing. You get caught and you're probably not necessarily thinking, you know, logically as a medical personnel, just to take your time to get the athlete back and make sure he doesn't break down. But at the time, I remember Jose coming out and I was at the side of the training pitch and he said to me, he said, why haven't we got like the best machines at this club? And I said to him, what do you mean? He said, why haven't we got like the best physio machines? And I said, I mean, we had every machine under the sun, right? I said, Jose, we have every machine you possibly can imagine. But I said to him, the best machines are these and this. They're the best machines. And you could clearly see he was irate. And this is before he got fired the first time. And he then turned around and said to me, he says, I don't think you're as good as the guy that was here before. And I turned around and looked at him and I was fine. And Dean Keneally, who's a great physio, was there before me. But he came from track and field. And there was a joke amongst the players that Dean couldn't kick a football. So he'd go out, throw the ball to the players. And my whole career, since 1993, I've been in football. So I said, why? You know, I couldn't get I got master's degrees, I got manual therapy, MACP, I got this, got that, you know. I'm like, don't understand. And this was obviously before that part broke down. So he said, I don't know. He said, I just a feeling I get. And he walked off. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? And the guy that I massively respect said I'm shit. So I went home that night. I couldn't sleep. I'm tossing and turning, talking to my wife. I'm like, what am I doing? This is crazy. Like I'm busting my gut. I'm trying to bring this department together. It's a big department. There was a lot of egos and conflicts going on within the department. I said, this is madness. So I couldn't sleep. I literally got in the car and I'm driving in and I'm thinking, I can't, I might as well quit. I can't deal with this if the guy at the top thinks I'm crap. So I went to training the next day and I said to him, can I talk to you after training? He said, sure. So I went up to his office and he's got on his desk and I looked at him straight in the eye and I said, you know what you said to me yesterday? He went, yeah. I said, I think you're wrong. And I think you're wrong because of this, so my experiences, what I've done, my qualifications, blah, blah, blah. And I looked straight in the eye at him and I said, you know what? I'm going to prove you wrong. And all of a sudden, this big smile came on his face. He put his feet up and pulled that phone out and ordered the coffee and went, sit down. And straight away, I just thought, you son of a... So he was testing me.
Yeah.
Right? He was testing me to see if I'd take the bait and was man enough to challenge him. And a lot of people wouldn't. You know, because he's strong. He's a really strong personality. And a lot of people would have gone down. And really what it was, are you a strong enough character for me to push you? Because at the time it was like he needed people back fit.
No.
Again, another lesson, right? Another great experience. But I was a sort of personality that I couldn't have that on my conscience. I would need to get it off my chest. I would need to talk straight, no BS. It's like, look, if it's not working, then I might as well leave. And then since then, I mean, actually the next day I was round his house treating his wife. So I think that actually formed a really good friendship between me and him, and obviously a respect that, you know, it wasn't anything to do with what he thought of me, because he clearly didn't. He clearly was like, he's testing. And that's the psychology of the coach. And he would do the same with the athletes, exactly the same. I remember he would go around and put formation up at half time and basically said, right, I'm going to give you 10 minutes. And if it doesn't work, I'm doing this and I'm bringing Malouda on. And basically what he was saying was that, Joe Cole, you're not playing very well today, bud, but I'm not going to say that in front of everyone else. I'm going to do it in a way that you know that the formation changes, you're coming off, but I'm not actually saying that. And all of a sudden, Joe Cole goes out, second half, game goes up another 5%. That's the art of the coach, the art of the psychology. And watching people like that and Phil doing it in a completely different way is fascinating. It's fascinating for me as a business person now, right? As a manager, fascinating on dealing with scenarios, dealing with people. I think there's a lot you can learn from seeing and working with these people in other industries, you know, because at the end of the day, it's all about winning and performance, whether that's making more money, whether that's being successful as a business and growing a company, or whether that's winning trophies. It's pretty much dealing with the human being and the psychology of those people, and, you know, arm around the shoulder, or whether you drive or push, or whether you stand your ground. Like I clearly was with Jose. I was like, no, I need to go and confront you with this. So yeah, you learn. And there's other times where I've done that and it's come back in my face, you know?
No, that is a fascinating story. And so have you seen the All or Nothing with Tottenham?
I have, yeah.
How realistic do you think that is? Is that like a good portrayal, do you think, of him and also the medical team? Are people acting up to that, or what do you think?
No, I think it is. I think it is definitely, I don't know obviously about some of the personnel within the team, but him, absolutely. And if you go back and look at it, you know, you see some of his motivation. He's very much like, everyone together, the family, and we're going to go and fight. Today's a fight. Every time is a fight. And we're going to win the fight. And we're going to win the fight together. So like the bringing the players in, if you watch him at half time, the repetition of what he says, that's absolutely 100%. Like I said, you know, for me, I learned a lot listening, observing, being on the periphery of that, you know, from a medical perspective at those half times, you know, one of the best I've ever seen, for sure.
Yeah, no, that is fascinating. So do you think that you've taken a lot of that from, like, you've got several business ventures with A-Therapy, Apollo, the consultancy work, like how much of that from Phil Jackson, Mourinho, do you think you've incorporated?
Huge, because, you know, like I said, the bottom line is you're dealing with people. So like, for instance, if we're recruiting a physio or a chiropractor or an osteopath at A-Therapy, by the time they come to me, I'm not really interested in their CV. They've got to the level that we're looking for. I'm interested in you. What makes you tick? Forget about physio. Or how do you deal with these scenarios? Talk to me about what you're looking for. Talk to me about what motivates you. Talk to me about where you want to go. Yeah? What do you like? A lot of people don't like talking about money, right? But, you know, my view is, what's the goal? Is it all about the money? People don't shy away from that comment. But a lot of people are motivated by money, right? Lifestyle. That's your lifestyle? Great. Tell me how you're going to get there. Tell me what your vision is. Because you can learn a lot from young people who are hungry to do that. And they're the sort of people, I have, in sport, I have two terms. I have what I call survivors, which are the people that will basically just plod along. They'll basically do what they need to do to survive within the environment. And unfortunately, there's a lot of them, but teams need them, right? They need steady eddies, consistencies, right? And then you've got innovators. You've got the mavericks. You've got the people that would challenge. And they're the people that I really like. I'm like the people that you can put in a position like Andy Barr and go, look, we need to try and look at this differently. Can we produce injury prevention? What do you need? Support them, back them, even argue with them. But the whole idea is that let people fly. And I think the more innovators you have within your environment, and you need a balance, especially in sport, but the more innovators you have, the better you're going to be year in, year out. And you never sit still, right? So my view is you win a premiership, you win an FA Cup, think you're the greatest, great, well done. Right, how are we going to do it next year? So how are we going to do it next year might be different to how we do it this year, right? So if I'm at Liverpool, how we did this is different this year. You've got a different scenario. You've got COVID. You've got this, that, and the other. How are we going to do it? That's really, really important. And those type of people, for me, those mavericks, those innovators, are the people that I surround myself with in what I'm doing. And same in the physio work. I've got some incredible physios, but have the personalities to deal with scenarios. You know, can they deal with VIP clients who are very demanding? Are they willing to go and see someone on a Sunday night at 9 o'clock? Not everyone is. But if you've got those people that understand, those innovators that are prepared to do that, go that extra mile, you're going to be very, very successful in the world of business. And obviously you need talent, right? There's no question that you've got to have talent. And you've got to realize, as a CEO, I realize I'm not going to be good at everything. So, I might need for Apollo, I need an expert CTO. I need someone who's been there and done it to raise $10 million, right? He's done it, he's bought the companies, he's built the companies, bring them on board with us. So my view is you've got to get that talent, support that talent, give them the tools and let them fly. And that's, in both of my businesses, that's what I've done.
No, it's interesting. Well, we're recruiting at the moment, so I'm definitely going to listen to some of that advice, because I think I agree. Personality is absolutely key for a lot of it.
Yeah, definitely. And even dealing with the athletes, my personality might be too strong for a player. Why? So therefore, put someone in who's, a different personality to deal with that scenario. That's where you juggle your positionings and realize that you're not going to be able to treat everyone. And that certain people that you've got and certain characters that will work better with certain other people and relationships, because relationships in anything you do, in business, in treatment, is huge, absolutely huge. And that comes from those individuals and that personality for sure. And that's something that I'm huge about. And the last thing is, you've got to have fun, right? Life's too short. You've got to laugh, you've got to smile, you've got to tell jokes, you've got to, I'll give you an example. We're going out this afternoon with some of my team from Apollo. We're going to go and play golf. Okay. You've got to get away, switch off. If you don't have that and you put that into place, we do a thing on a Friday with a therapy where we have a thing called Phone Friday. So the idea is that our physios will reach out to some of their clients and just bring them, how you doing? That personal touch. And it's not selling them anything. It's not, we need you to come back tomorrow. No, it's actually, you come to us, we care about you. What is it that you need? Is everything okay? Are you improving? Great. Because what will happen is that things like that will mean that that client will tell 10 of their friends and they'll come back to us next time they have a problem. And it's the same in any business or team that you have. You have to have this team around you that is prepared to go that extra mile, prepared to sort something out 9 o'clock at night. Not, well, this is out of work hours. That's not how you can build a business. Impossible. It can't always be, that you need those people around you. And for me, the innovators are the key, for sure.
Yeah. Great. No, that's good. Well, I've taken up a lot of your time here. One final question. Do you think Jose is going to lead you to the Premier League this year?
I think Jose will definitely win something at Tottenham, for sure. I think he just needs a little bit of time. And unfortunately, in sport, a lot of these managers aren't given enough time. And when I say time, I'm talking years. But you can tell that he's creating that siege mentality in the team. And I think that's something that probably they've been lacking. I think that some of them players on that team are probably too nice, hugely talented, but being nice not necessarily going to win you games. And, you know, that siege mentality of win and fight, I think will definitely bring them a trophy, and I certainly hope they will as a top of that.
Yeah, well, I'm an Everton fan, so I'm quite happy if they win it this year, actually.
So there's another style of management, all right, in Carlo,
Yeah.
completely different to Jose, but obviously very, very successful. And everyone that I've spoken to, ex-players, etc., like Frank and John and other people that have worked for him, say that he's incredible. And I actually went to school with Paul Clements, who worked as assistant manager, and I went and spent some time at Real Madrid when he was at Real Madrid as the coach. So completely different, more relaxed, friendly, approachable type of manager. But like I said, there's many different ways to get that success. And I just think that the adaptation of these people is sort of the key, and time. The unfortunate thing is when you're at the very top and you're in those environments, it's all about winning. And if you don't get the results, as we all know, you're out the door.
Mm. Great. Well, I'm going to go and let you warm up for your golf match. So catch you up, and yeah, we'll look forward to seeing how Apollo develops and A-therapy and everything else that you've got going on. But great to see you again. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate you.